My name's Dan McCarthy and I'm delighted to be joined by a new co-commentator, podcaster extraordinaire, Burton DeWitt's sidekick from the weekly Dartscast, Alex Moss. Welcome along. How are you enjoying Lakeside?
I'm loving it. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here at the home of World Darts, the Lakeside, and these two players both making their debuts. They're going to be feeling the buzz on that stage, and James Beaton certainly will. You mentioned about the travelling party that he's got coming with him. They're providing a great atmosphere, and hopefully he can live up to the occasion.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Weekly Dartscast in association with Darts Corner. I'm Alex Moss, back home safe from the Lakeside, ready for our big Ali Pally preview. And who better to have alongside me to look ahead to it all than the darts statistician, Burton DeWitt. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. It is Dartsmas. Would have been nice, we're recording this on Monday, would have been nice if Paul Lim hadn't missed 5 darts for the first set and was able to turn that into a title, because, that would be all we'll talk about for the rest of this decade, probably. But, final wasn't bad, and we'll come on to that later. So I'll say I'm fine. How are you, Alex?
Yeah, I'm doing okay here, thank you. A really enjoyable week for me at Lakeside. We'll delve into that a little bit later on, as you mentioned, with Paul Lim's run to the final. But most of this show is going to be focused on our preview for the PDC World Championship. We've got 3 great guests coming up as well. A former Ali Pally quarter-finalist, Ryan Joyce. I caught up with him a couple of weeks ago now. Over the weekend, I had the pleasure of chatting with Rashad Sweeting as well. He's going to be making history as the first player from the Bahamas to play at Ali Pally. So you're going to hear from him. Plus, Burton, you caught up with one of the PDC's top referees, Huw Ware, last week. All those chats to come later on, but let's get straight into it. The biggest tournament on the planet is almost here. The PDC World Championship starts this upcoming Sunday. How excited are you for Dartsmas season to begin?
We've had this question on the spreadsheet 8 years in a row now. And, the last few years I've said I don't think I'll ever be more excited than I was for the 2021 World Championships. And I'll say that again this year. I think that will remain the peak in level of excitement because of everything that happened in 2020. And to have the World Championships, while I know you guys were going back under lockdown, we weren't back under lockdown, but the caseloads were exploding, and I certainly wasn't going out. Having the World Championships for those 3 weeks, especially such a high-quality tournament in the end, was a needed distraction, and I was more excited for it than I'd ever been before, which is saying something, and I don't think I'll ever match that. But I'm certainly very excited for this World Championships because it's been such an insane year in darts. And Paul Lim this past weekend over in the WDF is the least of it. You look at who has managed to win majors. It's been the year of the unheralded player, the year of the upset. Whether we're talking Mike Decker, whether we're talking Richie Edhouse, whether we're talking, on the European Tour, 2 titles from Martin Schindler. This year has seen players pop up, win big matches against the top players, and not just then fold and disappear, but go on and lift the title from there. And even the finalists this year, Jermaine Wadamena, Martin Lukman, there's been just an endless just a litany of players who, if you had told me when the season began they were going to be in a major final, I certainly would want to know where you get your drugs from, because mine clearly aren't strong enough. But in the end, that's what's happened. And it's been so fun to watch. And despite all that, it's not like the top players have entirely disappeared. Luke Humphries has won 2 ranking majors, including the biggest one over the course of the season in the World Match Play. Luke Littler has won the Premier League. He's won the Grand Slam. He's won the World Series final. It's not like these top players have entirely disappeared, but when they've been beaten in matches, the tournament has been thrown open, and the depth has allowed so many players to come through and win. And that has made it so fantastic. It makes this a tournament that I'm looking at it, and yes, and we'll come on to it the next question. Luke Littler and Luke Humphries are and should be the 2 heavy favorites, but I can go 18 players who I could make an argument for could win this title. So I'm really excited. Not as much as I was for the 2021 World Championship. That would be impossible. But for a reason that I haven't said before, at least for any of the previous 8 years that we've asked it, because of how many players that I think could win this title, I'm very excited.
Yeah, as you said at the start there, it's a question that we more often than not start our PDC World Championship preview show with, because this is by far the biggest tournament of the year. It's the one that grabs the attention of not just the darts fans, but a much wider audience. And we saw that case in point 12 months ago with Luke Littler's run to the final, which certainly cut through, didn't it? It captured the general public's attention, and I can't believe that was almost a year ago now. It feels to me anyway like it was a lot longer than a year, and I don't know if that's just because of how busy this year has been, and also really what Luke Littler's gone on to achieve in his debut season on the PDC Tour, winning 10 titles, including the Grand Slam, the Premier League, climbing up to world number 4. It's a rapid ascent that we may never see again, but I guess this being the second World Championships for Littler, the first time going back to Ali Pali, the venue, the tournament, where really it all changed for him, not just on the Oche, but off the Oche as well. It was a life-changing 2 or 3 weeks for him, going from a 16-year-old debutant that we'd heard of, a lot of our listeners knew about, but outside of that, few people knew him, and practically everyone knows who he is now, and he returns as the pre-tournament favourite this year. So, yeah, that's an exciting subplot for me, I think, to see how Luke Littler follows up his first PDC World Championships, and do we see a repeat of that last World Final between Littler and the reigning champion Luke Humphries, which would be in the semi-finals. They're locked on a collision course to meet on the 2nd of January, but of course there's a lot of hurdles to overcome before then for both of them. But that's going to be fascinating to follow, I think, is both of their progress and see if they make it to the Final Four. And okay, it's not going to be a final, but if they do meet in the semi-finals, I'd say there's a high chance that whatever the record for the viewing figures was from the final last year, that they break that with that semi-final going into next year. But beyond the two Lukes, you mentioned a lot of it there, that there's been a lot of exciting things that have happened this year, surprising major winners. We've seen players come back into the reckoning as well. Gary Anderson's had a great year, but it is the two Lukes that have dominated the headlines. But I think the last two stages of the World Championships, there's been something that has captured the public's attention. You go 2 years ago, it was Michael Smith and the greatest 9-darter ever. Last year, it was Luke Littler. Is there going to be something or someone again this year that has that same effect? I don't know, but I'm excited to find out.
Well, I hinted at this. It is our question of the week, sponsored by Condor Darts. But who will win the 2025 World Championships? As opposed to normal, we only have two options this time. Option 1, Luke Humphries or Luke Littler. Option 2, anyone else in the 96-man field, or 96-person field, I should say.
Yeah, and looking at our poll on Twitter at the moment, it is running all week, so do go and have your say. But at the moment, it is very one-sided. 81% of our listeners are going Luke Humphries or Luke Littler. They're going to be getting their hands on the Sid Waddell Trophy on the 3rd of January. Just 19% saying it's going to be one of the other 94 players in the field at Ali Pali. And at the time of recording, the title sponsors, they've got Littler as the 15-8 favourite. And then you've got Luke Humphries just behind at 3-1. And I know your pick for the title, Burton. I'm not going to spoil it for our listeners. They're going to have to hang tight and keep listening for that. But I think it's understandable. Humphries or Littler is going to be a popular pick for many people. And you can see why. Humphries, his year as world champion, we spoke about it. I think the last time we did a podcast together, we were looking back at Humphries' season so far as a world champion. And it's gone pretty well, winning the match play, the World Cup, the Players' Championship finals, which was the last major we've seen in the PDC, and beating Luke Littler in the final. And for Littler, I touched on some of his achievements already this year. The Premier League, he beat Humphries in the final with a 9-darter, the Grand Slam, overcame a few scares along the way, but at times looked unstoppable. And for a lot of the Players' Championship finals, looked like the player to beat as well. But anyone who's asked me for the last few months who's going to win the Worlds, I've confidently said Peter Wright, and I won't repeat some of the responses I've had when I've said that. And yes, it is in hope rather than expectation, but it was only September, still a short time ago, that he beat Van Gerwen and Littler on his way to winning a Euro Tour and put in a string of performances that was so impressive. But he has dropped off considerably since then, so I can't go with Peter Wright as my official pick for this podcast, or you might be looking for a new co-host. But for me, I'm looking at the bottom half of the draw, and I'm going to go with a player who he's consistently played well all year. He's not had the results on TV to back it up yet, but I think he's got a big run due in him, and it could come in the World Championship. And you go back to the World Championship last year, he should have made the semi-finals at least, and maybe that has set him back a little bit this year in terms of the TV events. He's still picked up titles on the floor, though, so my pick for the World Championship, I'm not going to go with one of the Lukes. I'm going to go left field. I'm going to go with Chris Dobey to go all the way and become the PDC World Champion in 2025.
Well, we're both definitely going a bit out of left field with who we're picking. And I think, and we've talked about this, I think you would be crazy not to believe that Luke Humphries or Luke Littler in either order should be the two favorites in this tournament, because they should be the two favorites. And they are the two players who are most likely to walk away on the 3rd of January with the title. As I said earlier, Littler winning the Premier League, winning the Grand Slam recently, and yes, he was fortunate, but he created his fortune in that event. He came back in 2 matches. He did survive one dart at Bull from Mike DeDecker, but he created chances to get back in that match. He created chances to get back in the match against Gary Anderson, and he won those matches, and it showed that he's ready to be a champion in these big events, including the World Championships. And obviously, Luke Humphries is the world champion. He is the world number 1. He's already done it, and he's had as good of a year as almost anyone's had when they're reigning world champion, over at least since Michael Van Guren's era of dominance. But that doesn't mean they're going to win when it all counts. And I'm going to go a bit out of left field, because the player I am picking to win the World Championships has not had that much television success over the last, we'll say, 10 months. Only 1 quarterfinal on TV, but he's also made it to 6 finals on the Pro Tour this year. He's made the final session of 5 of the 13 Euro Tour events this year. And it's not like he's been going out to nobodies, at least most of the time, on telly. 3 times this year, he's lost to Luke Humphries in a major. The UK Open, in the World Match Play, in the World Grand Prix. Twice he's lost to Gary Anderson, when Gary Anderson averaged 102 and 99 in the European Championships and the Grand Slam of Darts. And that's after this player came through the group of death in the Grand Slam. He's ran into some monster performances by the best or second best player in the world, and the player who's playing as good as anyone else in Gary Anderson. He's not had the luck, but this time he won't have to play those players, at least early on, and he'll be able to get some big matches over a longer format under his belt before he has to play them. And that is the bullet, Stephen Bunting. It's not an easy start for him, going against either Alan Suter or Kai Goddard, but it's a relatively favorable draw. And I think getting that match, then getting a match probably against Dirk van Dijvenbode, and then maybe Damon Hedda, maybe Connor Scott, Mike DeDecker, Lawrence Ilagan, Luke Woodhouse, all of those are potential challenges, but over best of 7 sets, I think with 2 matches under his belt, Bunting will be ready for that. If he's going to play Luke Humphries, it won't be before the quarterfinals. If he's going to play Luke Littler, it won't be before the semifinal. And I think that will help him so that he's not going against them early, like has been the problem over most of the past few months. It's been a great year for Stephen Bunting. And I said he struggled on TV over the last 10 months, because if I said 11 months, that would be a lie. He won the Masters. He's been a little bit forgotten because of the televised struggles over the last few months, but he's had as good a year as almost anyone. And those 6 Pro Tour finals tied the record set by Luke Humphries a couple years ago for most Pro Tour finals lost in a year. He's done something only Luke Humphries has managed to do. Losing is not what he wants. Winning is. So if he can turn one of those finals into a title, great. And maybe the World Championships is where he's going to do it. I just think it's all going to come together and be a perfect cap for what has been a very, very good year for Stephen Bunting. He has not gotten the just rewards that his performances have deserved. It's going to happen at the Alexandra Palace. Stephen Bunting is going to be the PDC World Champion.
Those are our predictions for who is going to lift the Sid Waddell Trophy. We're going to be back in a moment with some more predictions. Going to be picking out our dark horses for the tournament. But before we do, let's bring in our first guest on this week's show. He's going to be one of the debutants in this year's PDC World Championship. The first player from the Bahamas to play at Ali Pali is our chat with Rashad Sweeting. I'm pleased to say we're joined by one of the debutants in this year's PDC World Championship, Rashad Sweeting, all the way from the Bahamas. Thanks for the time, Rashad. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, buddy.
Well, we're talking a little over a week now before you make your debut at Alexandra Palace in the biggest tournament in darts, making some history as well for the Bahamas. How are you feeling as we edge closer to your first round game?
I feel awesome. I feel great. This is the best feeling ever. I mean, there are some great feelings up there. Of course, my kids, and all that. But this is one of the goals and dreams that I've been dreaming from since I came into darts. So this is the greatest feeling ever.
Well, it is Jeffrey de Graaf up first for you, and there's a big carrot dangling in front of both of you with the winner to play one of the all-time greats in Gary Anderson in the second round. What was your reaction, though, when you saw the draw?
It wasn't to be... I have a saying. I don't want to seem like any interview that I do this on, I always say this. I don't want it to seem like I'm cocky. It's just I'm confident. I'm not stating that I'm going to beat anybody. I'm just stating that anybody, they're human. Anything is possible to happen. And I don't have no... the draw was great. I didn't care what happened or who I played against. I'm just excited to be here, and I'm glad that they accepted me. That's all it is.
Well, we'll come back to the World Championships later, but let's just go back to when you secured that spot at Ali Pali. It was via the Championship Darts Latin America and Caribbean Order of Merit. What have the last few months been like? Are you still on a high?
Yeah, I was a little bit disappointed when I did those because I was concerned about my average. Even though they stated that I topped the average of the whole tournament, I still wasn't. I weren't impressed about it. I stayed at home and I put in more work hours. It's hard to do a lot of times because I'm an officer. I work in the immigration department in my country. I'm an officer, so being in law enforcement, you don't have much time, but and it doesn't matter to them if I made the World Cup or not, or history in my country. Darts isn't as big as it is in England or the US or any other country. Darts is like any other sport, in this country, so they don't really recognize it. So my time was I just put in a lot more hours than I did, and I saw great improvement. So I'm very excited about my first game.
Good to hear. Well, we'll come back to the CDLC and obviously your work as well later, but let's go right back to the start for you in darts. Being from the Bahamas, when and how did you first get introduced to darts?
That's a good question. I've been waiting to tell this to everybody in the world. I've been in darts for 14 years. 14 or 15. I started in 2009. To be honest with you, I'm a natural athlete, so I can catch on any sport that I don't know and I get involved in. I'll play it and I'll catch on to it in 2 days. I can understand it. The thing is, darts, I never looked at darts as a sport. I mean, as a sport for me, I volleyball, basketball, football, I'm more physical. I play these things on a daily basis. When I go after work, I would go in the park and play. So when I saw there's a gentleman, Larry Sweeting, I was a mentor and a cousin of mine. He got me into darts. He was trying to introduce me to it. I was like, nah, the sport seems boring. I'm not going to stand up all day and throw no missiles at the board, and he challenged me because I love challenges. So when you tell me I can't do anything, I'm going to do my best and work hard to do it. He played me and he used to beat me and laugh at me, and I don't like that. So when he laughed at me, I just kept practicing and going by his home and interrupting his family breakfast early in the morning, just to compete against him. And eventually I got really good and he invited me into the league to a team. Which called we have a seasonal league over here that we play, Backyard Destroys, where I played with some veteran players, and it started there, and I just blew up from there, had some achievements first, before I was watching darts, watching Phil and all that, before he retired, and Gary, that's so awesome, you're going to see these guys, that's just crazy. I watched these guys, and I said, before I get there, I'm going to try to do some achievements in my country, because I wasn't the number one. I just came. There were some other players, and I wanted to pass their achievements and all that, And when I got to that stage, I went to the CDLC. That's when I cried because I made history, and I made it there as the first Bahamian. So being on that stage, it's just great. But to answer it, it's that's how it started, from right there.
Well, you called yourself an athlete then. You said that you've done some other sports in the past. How far have you got in those sports, or is darts the first one where you've really made it onto that world platform?
Another good question. So what I do is I love to teach a sport over here, and I don't charge. I just, when you know and you love doing something, you don't put a price on it. You know, if they want to give you something, then they give you it. I do the same thing with darts over here, and any other sport. Any young youth wants to learn how to do it like me, I would give them advice on it. But I also give them this great advice, that try other sports. Be open to learn other sports. Don't stick with that same sport. Now, to answer your question, I said that because I was playing basketball and volleyball, and I always believed that I wanted to be a basketball, an NBA player, or a national volleyball player. And I tried for the national team, and it didn't work out. And the basketball national team, it didn't work out either. So I just played basketball and baseball. I never tried for the national baseball, but when I got involved in darts and realized my accomplishments, I stuck with it and was just playing the other sports on the side, but was being careful because, you know, I'm right-handed and I didn't want to damage my hand. You know, you have some players out there who really wild at sports could damage you. So I saw darts and I put actually volleyball and basketball is one of my top sports. Darts just surpassed them by accolades. You know, I said, well, this is my number one sport now. I'm playing darts, and I'm going to stick with it. And I started buying equipment and getting all into it, dissecting the game, understanding the throw stance, you know, form, technique, and everything. I tried almost everything in the world. I mean, almost everything. There are some things I haven't seen in darts yet, you know, so I haven't tried it. But almost everything just to get to that game, that level, to that stage. So I'm here. That's what made me to be here. But darts has done it all for me, so it's my number one spot at the top of my list.
Yeah, darts is your number one sport, and you touched on it earlier. You work as an immigration officer, so what is it like juggling work with playing darts? Have you been able to have a good balance?
Yeah, it's a good balance. Like, I have shifts in my country. Right now, it's 10 a.m. Like, I would have shifts from Monday. I work from Monday to Friday, and my shifts would be, morning would be, I have to be to work for 6 in the morning, get off 12. That's a good hour, because when I get home, I can always practice long hours. But then it's an afternoon shift. That's 12 to 8 in the night. And when I get home at 8, you know, you'll be tired. You know, I don't care. When I'm tired, my eyes are falling asleep. I'm still putting in the work. I'm still doing it because I have endurance. I do a lot of sports, so I have endurance built in. So even though I was fighting sleep. I was throwing darts at the board. You know, my wife's telling me, like, you know, come to bed. And I'm like, nah. I got to put in this work. This is bigger than me. It's not only for me, it's for the country, so they can understand that this sport is really, it could be really something big in the country, you know. So yeah.
And we've already seen you represent the Bahamas as well. Last year, the WDF World Cup, you made the trip over to Denmark to play in that event. What was that experience like for you?
That was my first, to be honest with you, I've never traveled outside of my country. Like, the Bahamas are made up of 700 islands. Traveling to the islands is nothing, but traveling outside, that was my first trip outside of the country. Being in another foreign land is just exciting on itself, you know. I was just appeased by the culture that they had there. It's just like, it's somewhat the same as England, so I'm seeing all those players. I even get to see I was shooting back to back with what's his name? I forget his name. He's from the same area Michael Van Gerwen's from. He played in the PDC. Kelsian. Yes, Kelsian. He was at the tournament also. And I was practicing on a board by myself, and he came there. And I wanted to be I kept looking at him, like, his back was turned, so he would know it. I'm like, wow, this how dart players look, bro. He's tall. Dart players are very tall. And every time he turned around, like I was not paying attention to him. It was a great experience to see all those players. We got to Japan. We played a lot of countries. It was good. The average, the game itself, the atmosphere, they're very friendly. The dart community is very friendly, man. So I'm going to be here for a long time until my body tells me, nah, not today. You know, you can't do this no more.
Good times. Well, let's get on to this year then. And it was the second year that we've seen the CDLC tour, and I heard in one of your interviews you said you were second guessing yourself about going, but some other people persuaded you to go. So what was holding you back from going to begin with?
To be honest, it was two things. One of the main reasons was I felt that I wasn't there yet because I've never been to this. This seemed to me, it was a big tournament, and it is extreme. There are a lot of talents in that tournament from a lot of Caribbean countries. They're very awesome. But I was doubting my average and my grip and stuff. I didn't quite have everything down pat, because I wasn't putting in time now like I'm doing now. Like the hours I was just coming home, and I have a game, I have a console, so I didn't take the practice serious for that because I wasn't planning on going, mainly to finances. It wasn't, there was support from the dart community. They helped it a lot. But there was, when I looked for the country to assist, they didn't say it's not an Olympic sport, so they were not trying to sponsor me. So that discouraged me, trying to come up with the funds for everything. But the dart community over here assisted me very much. We had some friends that did it, and of course my average. I was saying okay with the average. That's why I told you at the tournament, even though I won, I still was disappointed. Even though he stated that my average was the highest, I looked at it. It was only 70. And it's one game that you did 90 and one game that you might have hit 100 peak, but overall, best of the six or first of six, first of three, first of five, you only did a 70 average consistently, and I wasn't impressed with it.
Well, the CDLC only started last year. Did you follow any of it last year online, the scores, look into it before you made that debut in Jamaica in July to see what the level was like?
No, sir, I didn't. I solely made, like I told you, I solely made it my mission to focus on my dart game. Even if I have chores doing things to do in my country, my woman, she does it all for me. She does all the interview and all that. Filling out the application, because I was just sticking to showing darts every day I get home. So I didn't get time to look at anything, any videos. I just want to stay zoned in and locked into honing my skill.
Well, what a debut it was on the CDLC this year. You won the first event of the season in Jamaica, the final against Guillermo Soto, all 11 legs going with throw. There was a bit of everything in that final, a 32 dart leg in there, but some real quality as well, a 14 and a 15 dart to win it 6-5. What did that title mean to you?
To me, I'll be honest, I don't want to seem like it's not, it's a big thing. I didn't feel, to me, it didn't feel like a big thing because this is my first time and what, I really do be in the zone. Like when I'm playing darts, there is a zone and you would think that I'm being rude. If you speak to me, it would seem like I'm ignoring you, but I'm not. I'm just focused. I have a mission and I'm focused on the mission, so I'd say hi and bye. But then winning that tournament was the same thing. I was just focused. The reason when I actually broke down in tears is when I went to my apartment, because when it happened, I was excited that I won, but didn't really. I heard them speaking about the first and accomplishment and all that, but yet it didn't get to me because I was just saying that I know I was going to win. And my mind said, I know I was going to win this. I told you I was going to win this, but I wasn't like, whoa, I just won the CDLC until I went to my apartment. I was like, babe, I just realized what I did. It's like, what you talking about? I just won a big tournament, my first ever tournament, like big tournament. She's like, yeah, you just realized that? I was zoned out. And I just made history for the Bahamas. It's like, what happened to you? And I thought, I'm sorry. That's how it is. So my zone is crazy. I just stay focused on the mission. But it was awesome. Winning that, I maybe broke down in tears because I knew now where I'm heading. And be honest with you, I'm sorry that I didn't start off with it. But God has got me through everything. It's because of God that I'm here, and I prayed for it. And God, the reason being is because God probably stated that I wasn't ready yet to be here, and the time was ready. It was now that He said, "Well, Rashad, you're on that level. I'm going to let you go there and see and test this level versus pro players, the best pro players, the best top players in the world." That's why I'm excited, because this is my time, and I know that's what God is saying to me.
Yeah, it's a special moment to win that title on your debut. You made the semi-finals of the second event. Going on to the second weekend, though, another title, you make another final of the second event. At what point did you find out that you had done enough and you'd secured that top spot and Ali Pali?
There was somebody who was watching me. She was a part of the tournament, Sally. She's from the US. She was a part of the tournament, organizing it. And she kept, because again, I was not focused. The tournament was like, we are not going to be babysitting anybody, no players. You got to download the app and look in your tablet and know when your game. If you don't, and you don't go to the board, and you forfeit, So I'm like, yeah, my zone is crazy. So I'm like, okay, I'm glad I brought my girl with me so she could stay focused on these stuff. But Sally, she was like, appeased by my game, she kept watching me and kept, she's like, I'm rooting for you, Rashad. She kept telling me, you're up. She kept telling me, and, you're good. And she spilled it. She's like, whether or not he wins or loses, he has more points than everybody, so he's in. You're in, Rashad. And I'm like, everybody just keep coming, congratulations. I'm like, what they tell me, congratulations? Oh, I haven't even played the finals yet. The finals ain't even started yet, So I was like,
I mentioned, we touched on it earlier, you are the first player from the Bahamas that's going to play at Ali Pali, the biggest darts tournament in the world. How special is that, and what's the reaction been like back home since you qualified?
I can't speak for the country itself. I mean, only the dart community. The dart community has been there. They have been congratulating me, and of course, I'm just going to go and say it. Of course, there are going to be some people that, because coming from a country that hasn't been there in darts to that stage yet, you're going to have some negativity of people that state that, well, you probably not go past the first, or you might not go past. Even if you go past the first, you got Gary Anderson. Again, it doesn't matter. To me, they're human, they breathe. Nobody that I'm playing is going to be a machine up there. And if they are, I mean, that's just them on a good game, and I could probably do the same on my good game, just as good, because I'm there. I made it there, so there's a reason why I made it there. But the dart community was supportive. Then you have your positive side and negative side, to be honest with you. I never let it get to me. I use that as fuel for my flames, When you tell me, again, I love challenges, like I told you. When you tell me I can't do something, or I'm not going to do something, I'm going to show you that I can. I'm going to prove to you that I can. So, yeah.
Well, you've done that by qualifying for this tournament, and one of the interviews you did recently, we saw your darts case. It's quite a big darts case. Are you going to be taking that one with you on stage, or are you going to take a smaller one with you?
I don't know. I have read the rules, but it didn't say anything about a dart case up there, and I don't want to carry too many darts because I'm throwing with a lot of darts to test the average. I also signed up, so I was trying a lot of. I'm not sure. I don't want to be confused and picking darts, but again, I catch on the sub quickly, so if I pick up any dart and I throw it, it's just a feel for me, what I'm looking for. And like I said, in this country, it doesn't have a store like England has. It doesn't have a dart community store where you could go in a lot of it and you could just buy darts, try it out before you buy it. No, over here, if they sell darts at our sports center, when we buy it, we buy it. If it doesn't work, you only go and buy luck. So that's the bad thing about it. And it don't be the darts that you need. They're only buying off what they think. They don't know about darts, so they're just buying it, off price, I'm assuming.
Definitely. Well, just a few more before we let you go, and we've only followed your scores on Dart Connect. We've not seen you play on a stream or on TV before, so talk to us about your current dart setup. What are you throwing with?
I'm playing with the 180s. I'm using 180 darts. I purchased some 180 darts. There was a friend of mine who also spent a lot of money on me from the US. Sally, she has spent a lot of money buying equipment and hoping that everything works for me. So I'm trying them out. A lot of 180 products. I tried to reach out to them also, but I didn't get no good response. I didn't get no response at all. I would say good, no response at all. I tried to email them, and it didn't went through. I don't know if that's the same email that's on the internet. But everything to me is going well. I'm changing my points, switching up flights, and I was trying my stuff online versus the AI board, and going online and testing it out. And I was getting some good comments. I was looking at the average; it was steady. But it's different when a player is in front of you. It's a different feeling from being by yourself and playing online than to being when a presence is there. And I embrace that. So whether or not I've been shooting darts, I've not been longer than a lot of players that are doing it now, but I know that my mental game is there, my focus is there. Like, you could stand by the board and score for me, and you could turn around and look at me, which is against the rules, but I won't even have a problem with it, because I'm just a cool person. I'm very cool. I'm like, once you don't put your hand on the board, I'm not trying to pay for no medical bill, bro. So you could stand and look at me, but I don't care if you move around or throw keys, or you could drink your booze by the venue, by the board scoring. I don't care, I just love the games. I love the game of dart and what it's done for me, and of course, what God has made it done for me, most importantly.
Well, we put a post out on our social media channels asking for questions for you, and we've got a couple that have come in from our listeners. The first one from El Tunio, who says, are you excited and will you be wearing that shirt? I think he means the one with the Bahamas colours that you wore during the qualifiers. He said, I think you should, it's amazing. And he also said, what's your walk-on song?
Okay, so this was crazy. I really, to be honest with you, I want to, since it was the first time making history, I didn't want to disrespect the country and not do a Bahamian song. So I did a Bahamian song. But the song that I listened to in my practice is Eminem, Lose Yourself. Yeah, I don't know if you know that song. It's a good song.
Yeah.
You know, one chance, you know. You got that one chance, don't let it slip, and this is my one chance. It's like, you know what, I'm not going to put that on. I'm going to let my walk-on song be a Bahamian song. It's by Naka. Naka, it's online. It's you look at it, it's on YouTube. You put in the name. It's awesome, and the shirt being there is great. Just getting there is awesome. The feeling is great. I'm excited every day that I wake up. I wake up early in the morning, 3 o'clock, but I don't even have breakfast. I wake up early in the morning, everybody's sleeping, I'm throwing darts at the board. So I can tell you that I'm really serious about it. And I warm my kettle and put on some tea, drink some tea, and I'm up there throwing, and I'm making noise in the room. So yeah, I'm gonna wear a shirt. I have a shirt design. I'm gonna wear a shirt similar to the same color. But here's what, you come to the game, let me know who you are. I'm bringing my shirt, that same shirt, and if you have a dart shirt, we'll trade shirt. How about that?
Oh, that's a great offer for him. And the next one we've got comes from Brandon, who says, is the fried conch really that good there? I'm told that alone is worth the trip, but with darts there, maybe there are 2 reasons.
It is awesome, buddy. It is awesome over here. It is awesome, bro. You're losing out. You better come before I eat a ball, bro.
Happy days. And lastly, beyond Ali Pali, what does the future hold for you in darts? Obviously, the focus is on the World Championships, but after that, what goals and targets do you have in this game?
Well, I'm here. Like I remember I told you from the start, like I didn't say anything about darts until I started getting doing accomplishment and doing some accolades, winning accolades in the sport. This is the biggest accomplishment ever for any Bahamian and me in darts. The biggest ever. My biggest stage ever. So, moving forward, I'm going to focus more on all the tournaments that they invite me to. That's going to get me there. And I'm not going to stop and tell my body, like I told you, my body says, hey, no, Rashad, you can't do this no more, buddy. Stick to something else. Let's play some cards or something,
Brilliant. Well, Rashad, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you. Really appreciate you taking the time, and we wish you all the best for your debut at Ali Pali and what else is to come in the rest of your darts career as well.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry that I postponed it a lot of times. It's just that the timing, and when it came to the timing in my work, the work didn't really. I know that someone called my work, but they still were like, of course, some jobs would be like, this is not a part of your job. You got to do this off our time, not on our time, So they didn't understand it. So it wasn't, But they love that they put me up on the site, so they love that I'm doing this. So I really appreciate your time and then the effort that you put into wanting to interview me. Thank you so much, buddy.
Thanks again to Rashad for joining us now. Continuing our look ahead to the PDC World Championships. We've given our predictions for a title winner. I've gone with Chris Dobie. Burton, you've gone with Stephen Bunting. But what about a dark horse and any players to watch out for in this upcoming tournament?
Yeah. I mean, it's getting harder and harder to pick a dark horse each year because there's so many players that I think you can make a really good case for. And that's why I said in the first question that we talked about, you can make a case for maybe a dozen to 18 players who, if they have a good couple weeks, could be world champion this time around. But at least for, and Stephen Bunting might fall into the dark horse category that as well, even though he's, one of the top 8 seeds in this event. So I'm going to go for just players who have to play from the very first round. The non-seeded players is how I'm going to define it. And we were talking before, and I sent you 2 dark horses, and I'll go with those 2 here. One, and it's weird thinking of this player as a dark horse, but I mean he's unseeded, lost all 3 matches at the Grand Slam of Darts somehow, but obviously is good enough, and that's Vessel Nyman. And his draw is really, really favorable. And he has to be the favorite to make it to the third round. And honestly, I would even say on current form, I would make him the favorite of the 6 players in that little area to make it to the last 16. He should be able to get past the South African qualifier, Cameron Carolizin, in the first round, and he should get through Joe Cullen in the second round, as Cullen is in really bad form right now. And then it's either Gerwyn Price or Kim Huybrechts or Keen Barry, and right now, I would say Wessel Nijman's playing better than any of those. And that would put him in the last 16, where could be Johnny Clayton, it could be Mickey Mansell, it could be Daryl Gurney, could be someone else as well. And I think that would be a very good last 16 match. I don't know who would be the favorite. I would think if Johnny Clayton is there or Daryl Gurney, it would be pretty close to even in the betting numbers, but it would certainly be winnable. This is a great draw for Wessel Nijman to make at the very least the last 16. And it really would not be that much of a surprise to see him on New Year's Day in the quarterfinals, or even to make it to the semifinals of what I think is the most wide open quarter. And that's why my other dark horse is also coming from this quarter. And it's not one player, it's 2 players, because they have to play each other in the first round. And I think I hinted to this a couple weeks ago when we talked, when the draw came out, as the match, or one of the matches in the first round I am most looking forward to. And that's Richard Veenstra against Alexis Toilo. I don't know which of these 2 players will win this match. Veenstra is a player who should be accomplishing more. He's doing well in the PDC, but he hasn't taken his game to that next level. I talked about it a year ago. He had some brutal draws. His first 22 Players Championship events, he lost to only people who had been to televised finals or won Euro tours. So that tells you how tough of a draw he was getting, and that you had to be a really good player to beat him. But he hasn't taken advantage and pushed on. A player of his caliber should be winning more of those matches. And he hasn't been. And that's not to say he's not doing well. That's why he's qualified here relatively high up the Pro Tour Order of Merit in 14th. But I think he's a player who should be pushing on towards qualification for the World Match Player of the World's Grand Prix, and he hasn't done that yet. But Alexis Toilo was making pretty much every Asian Tour final for half the year. He did tail off a little bit at the back end of the year, but it didn't stop him from just having an unprecedented season. I think that is a really interesting first round tie, one that could go either way, and one that the winner of, I would fancy to beat Christoph Ratajski, and I would fancy to beat either Michael Smith or Kevin Dodds or Noah Lynn van Leuven in the third round. I think this is a big opportunity for either of those players to make it well past Christmas because, well, I think they're both good enough. But only one of them obviously can, because one of them is going to be going home in the first round. As far as any other players to watch, I am curious to see, how our guest Rashad Sweeting gets on, a player we've never seen anyone from his country, let alone him, before at the World Championship. And I really want to see how a lot of these qualifiers from around the world go on. I'm going to name one more who I won't say is a dark horse, but I want to see what he does, and that's the Chinese qualifier, Zhong Xiaochen. We've seen him at the World Championships a few times before. He was 2-0 up on Kyle Anderson back in the 2020 World Championships, the last time we saw Kyle Anderson on the big stage, but he ended up losing that match. We've seen him multiple times in the World Cup of Darts. He is a very, very good Chinese player. The best probably that China's ever produced. And I think he's a player who, even if Ricardo Pacheco brings his best game, he can cause problems for. And we don't know which Ricardo Pacheco is going to show up right now. I think this is a good chance for him to get through the first round. So I'm going to point him out as well as a player I'm looking for. I'm not going to name him as a dark horse. I don't think his experience is there yet for me to think he can pull off a string of big wins, but I think he has that potential. He has a game, and maybe it'll be enough to finally get through that first round.
Some good picks there, and I really like the Wessel Nijman shout as well. We were discussing it at work earlier actually today. I didn't realise he's now the joint 7th favourite for the title, which is remarkable given on one hand this is only his second World Championship and he lost out in the first round on his debut, but on the other hand I guess it just shows how well he's done in his first year on the tour. You mentioned those performances at the Grand Slam a month ago. Yes, it was 3 defeats, but a tournament average of 107, even in defeat. I think a lot of people sat up and took notice of this young Dutchman, and he's a name that, forget the 32 international qualifiers for a moment, but all of the 32 seeds, they wanted to avoid him in that draw. And as it turns out, he's been placed in that bottom half of the draw away from the two Lukes, but still some tough hurdles to overcome if he is to get through past New Year's Eve into the last few days. And I know Gary Anderson, he's been touted the last few years as a dark horse by some, but 10-1, third favourite. I can't really sit here and say with a straight face that Anderson is my dark horse. He's playing too well at the moment, and he's a two-time world champion as well. So my dark horse, I'm going to go with Gian Van Veen, 40-1. Again, like Wessel, second time playing at Ali Pali, lost a close one in his first round on debut last year, but I just look at all the experience and match time he's banked in the 12 months since then. He is the PDC World Youth Champion, and yes, he had a fair bit of luck in the end to win that particular title with Jurien van der Velde missing the match starts in the final a few weeks ago, but he took his chances, and going back to the Grand Slam, I touched on those averages for Wessel Nyman. Well, Van Veen topped that group in the end, and he ran Gary Anderson very close in the quarterfinals as well. And he's coming in as a seed this year as well, so he's going to avoid that tricky first round, which could be a help or a hindrance. We don't know, but I think Van Veen has got all the tools really to go far in this tournament, and possibly Rob Cross in the last 32, then possibly Nathan Aspinall in the last 16. But I don't think he gets fazed by the player anymore. He believes that he can do some damage, so he's going to be my dark horse to make a deep run. And just quickly, players to watch. Obviously, we've got to give a shout out to Rhys Griffin, friend of the show, came through the tour card holder qualifiers. Nico Springer, I'm interested to see how he does on debut. Someone that I think we've been looking at for a few years now to maybe get his tour card or qualify for events like the World Championship, and he's done it this year. Stowe Bunce, it's going to be his second crack at Ali Pali. I know he's pleased that he's not going to be playing on that opening night. He's going to have a little bit more time to adjust to things this time round. And lastly, one more, Alan Suter. I think it's nice to see him back at the Worlds. He missed it last year, but his first couple of years at Ali Pali really did make a mark, didn't he? I think he got to the last 16 in both years and picked up a few scalps. So yeah, a few names there in round one I'm looking forward to watching.
And now we'll move on to our second guest on this week's show, and it's with the World Grand Prix semi-finalist Ryan Joyce.
I'm pleased to say we're joined by the two-time Players' Championship winner, Ryan Joyce. Thanks for the time again, Ryan. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm alright.
Well, it's good to catch up. We're talking at Mission HQ, one of your sponsors, and when we're talking today, you've agreed a new deal with them. So what is it about the team here and why you agreed the new deal?
Well, obviously I've been with Mission for a while now, and everything's been nice and smooth, very professional. I like the equipment they provide, and there was absolutely no reason not to continue.
And I was looking back, yeah, you joined Mission almost 3 years ago now, the end of 2021. From someone who's been on the books with Mission, we've seen what they've done over the last few years. What have you made of how the brand's risen over the last few years?
Yeah, they've signed a lot of players on since they signed me, a lot of young talented players as well. So it's exciting to be part of a team like that who are heavily invested in young players and trying to bring them on, and it's quite an exciting project.
Definitely. Well, before we started, we mentioned you had a chat with my co-host Burton DeWitt. That was back in December 2019. We won't go over every game you've played since then, but one I've got to bring up is Ryan Joyce 8, Dave Chisnell 7, the final of a Players' Championship in 2020, your first PDC title. What was that moment like when you won the decider?
Yeah, it was a funny game that. I still remember being 7-3 down in that game and had to win the last 5 legs in a row. And I need a little bit of luck, a little bit of help from Chizzy, missing a few match starts at double. But it was nice to win a first PDC title. Obviously, it was a really special moment.
And back then, the world was very different. I think those were the first events during the pandemic. So you'd had 3 or 4 months off. Were you just itching to get back out there?
Well, I can't remember that far back and how I was feeling specifically about that. I couldn't say how I was feeling about that pandemic, and I just can't remember. It's such a long time ago now.
Fair enough. Well, that title did get you the debuts in the World Match Play, the World Grand Prix. Obviously, they were behind closed doors as well. Did it feel special playing in those events, or was it difficult not having the crowd there?
Yeah, because it's the first time I played in those events, I didn't really know what's the difference between playing behind closed doors and in front of a crowd, because I'd never played in front of the crowd to compare it. So it was just a new experience for me. I just tried to learn from it, just how I felt about playing and how good the opposition was and things like that. I learned a lot from those games, yeah.
Well, one game I'm sure you felt good in was the Grand Prix debut against Peter Wright, 96 average to knock him out in the first round. How pleased were you with that? Probably one of your best performances up to that point on the stage.
Yeah, I was always looking forward to playing in that, because finishing's my strength. Hitting doubles is the strongest part of my game, and I remember going into the competition with a lot of confidence, and obviously that helped a lot. If you play with confidence, there's no better feeling than that. And the Grand Prix was a really special event for me, because I proved to myself that I'm capable of absolutely top class darts in that event.
Definitely. Well, the next few years after that, you're hovering around the 35 to 45 mark in the rankings, but at the end of 2022 you miss out on Ali Pali via the Pro Tour. You have to go to that tour card holder qualifier. What was that like going to that event?
When was that?
End of 2022.
Oh, I remember that, yeah. It was the first time I had to qualify for the World Championship since I joined the PDC. But I remember being confident, determined that I was going to get through that, and I played really well in the qualifiers and eased through really, so I was right to be confident that I could do it that way.
Yeah, you certainly proved that. And last year we saw you kick on again, a couple of finals on the floor, followed by that second Players' Championship title. Did it feel like only a matter of time before those runs on the floor come onto the stage?
Not really. I didn't ever think in that way. I didn't plan ahead like that. I don't plan ahead. I just try and take each game as it comes, whether it's on the stage or on the floor. I just try and throw one dart at a time. I don't read into anything like too much about it.
Fair enough. Well, that deep run would come last year, the Players' Championship finals, your first major semi-final, being involved in a final session of a major. Talk to us about that experience.
Yeah, I remember that. I think I got beat off Luke Humphries in the end, didn't I? It was one of those weeks where I felt like I got better and better as the matches went on, and the opposition got stronger. I seemed to be able to cope with it better than I had done in the past. I can't remember exactly if there was any changes or any change in confidence, or just maybe just a little bit of luck here and there that you need sometimes to have those sort of runs. Nothing in particular sticks out as having changed for us to get that far.
Well, let's get on to this year then, and you've been in all the ranking majors again. First time you've done that since 2020. First time playing at the Winter Gardens. We speak to a lot of players. They say it's one of their favourite venues. Where does it rank for you?
I didn't spend much time in the Winter Gardens. I lost in the first round to Steve Bunton, but I did play well. It was a solid effort. Steve Bunton was playing really well at the time, and I pushed him all the way to sudden death, so I was pleased with how I played, just not so happy with the result. Playing at the Winter Gardens, it didn't feel much different to all the other venues really. I think if I'd played at all the venues maybe 10 times in a row, 10 years in a row, and then you'd learn a lot more about them and how they feel, and so I'd be able to answer that question better. But with it being only my first time there, I can't really say whether it's special or different, or I can't really remember much about it, to be honest.
We'll ask you again in 10 years' time then. Well, what about the World Grand Prix? Because you had a great run there. You stayed there for most of the week, the semi-finals, 2 nail-biting wins against Nathan Aspinall and Rob Cross, 2 of the Premier League players this year. That must have felt good to beat them on the big stage. Yeah,
it did feel good, and I had promised everybody before I went down that I was going to play well and I'm going to have a good run. So I put myself under a lot of pressure before the event, but I always backed myself to do well in that specific event. With my strength being hitting doubles, I was pleased that I was able to get to the semi-final. It took an exceptional performance from Luke Humphries to knock us out in the end. I thought I played my best darts in that semi-final. I lost 5 sets to 0 unbelievably, but he's such a phenomenal talent that sometimes you've got to expect that from the very, very top players.
Yeah, we'll come on to Luke later as well. Speaking of high-profile names, they don't get much bigger than Michael van Gerwen. A few weeks ago, you knocked him out of the Grand Slam. I know neither of you played at your top game, but still to knock out Michael in a high-pressure game, that must be another feather in the cap as well.
Yeah, it was a funny old week that. I felt like I wasn't playing very well. I was struggling to get the scoring going. I felt I was underperforming in the whole competition. And to be honest, I went into the game with not very really high hopes. I was just hoping that Michael would have one of his bad games. He seems to be having more and more of those lately. But I scraped past him in the end. I had 9 really good darts in the very last leg under pressure, so I can take a little bit of confidence from that.
Just before the Grand Slam, we had the last lot of Pro Tours. You were one of the players dressed up as Steve Beaton. I know he meant a lot to you on the tour. We spoke with Nathan Aspinall recently, and he said you were very close to wearing fake tan and really being the bronze Adonis. So how close were you to putting on the fake tan?
Yeah, it was something that we discussed as a group. The group of players that sit with Steve on the Pro Tour for the last few years, we discussed a lot of different things, and that's what we decided on in the end. But if everybody had agreed to it, we would have definitely done that.
That'd have been good to see. Well, it was sad to see Steve miss out on Ali Pali this week, not get that proper farewell, but we thought we'd give you the chance to say a few words, because obviously he meant a lot to you. You've sat with him for the last few years on the tour. Yeah,
Steve, well, he's an absolute legend of the game, isn't he? That's what everybody describes him as, and it's very fitting to call him that, because he's such a nice bloke. Forget about the darts and everything else, he's just a great bloke, just a really nice person. Nice to talk to, nice to spend time with. It's going to be a huge miss for us. I used to spend a lot of time practicing with him before Pro Tours. We used to do nothing but laugh and just have a good time, and it's really sad to see him go, yeah. And I was really disappointed for him the other day, losing that game 6-5, I think, so close. I'd love to have seen him have a proper send-off at the Worlds. It's going to be huge miss for everybody, I think. And
it looks like he's still going to stay in the top 64. Have you tried to persuade him, say give it one more year, Steve?
Oh, everybody's tried. Yeah, his mind's made up. He's gonna have a go at he's not giving up darts. He's got lots of exhibitions lined up. Yeah. He's playing in this World Seniors Tour. He's doing all that. He probably plays some Modus maybe, I don't know. Yeah. I'm sure he'll be invited. So he'll still be just as busy, just not playing in the PDC anymore.
Yeah. Well, let's get on to the Worlds just briefly for you. The draw was made on Monday. Darius Labanowska's first up, the winner, to play Danny Noppert. What was your reaction to the draw?
Yeah, it's just it is what it is. You look at all the other draws and you think, well, there's not really any easier routes, is there? Everybody's so good these days. Both of those games, Labanowskis and Noppert are both very good players. They'll be competitive. They're hard to beat. Just like you look at all the other draws, all the same. So it is what it is. You've got to get on with it and see what you can do. Try and prepare well, and as long as you're prepared well, that's all you can do, isn't it?
And for you weren't far off entering as a seed at Ali Pali this year. I know you spoke about it during the Grand Prix, your fear of flying, which is why you've pulled out of some of the Euro tours this year. Is it something you've always had to try and deal with, or has it been something that's come on recently?
Yeah, it's not just a fear of flying. I know I don't like flying, but I don't even like travelling, full stop. So spending that much time away from home in foreign countries is not something I enjoy doing. So it's difficult for us to motivate myself to go to these events. I do try and get to some of them, and I know it's my job, I should be doing it, but sometimes you wake up in the morning and you think, I just don't want to go. Yeah. And it sounds funny, but playing darts and being good at darts or being in the top 32, it's not all there is in your life, you know. There's more important things in life than being good at something, or, you know, travelling around and stuff. Sometimes put your own mental health first is important, you know, and have a bit of time to yourself. It's really important for me, otherwise I think I'd get too stressed over the year and I'd end up quitting the sport altogether maybe. So I think I'm doing the right things. I hope I am anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably the side that people don't see. They think, oh, professional dart player, you're living a great life. But like with any job, you have your bad days, your good days, and you wake up and go, oh, I don't want to go to work today. But as a professional dart player, sometimes you don't have a choice. So it's good for you that you can be in that position high up in the rankings to go, you know what, I'm going to pick and choose the events that I want to go to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mentioned like things like mental health and stuff. People don't realise what goes on behind the scenes or what someone's thinking inside their head. You know, some people just need a break from things sometimes, and I try and choose the best times to have that extra time that I think that I need to be able to keep performing at such a high level sometimes.
No, that's fair enough. Well, you are on the brink of that top 32, 7th consecutive trip to Ali Pali coming up. You've come a long way from working in the warehouse at Matalan. We've seen Luke Littler's got the sponsorship deal with Boohoo Man. Have Matalan been in touch about getting a sticker on the shirt?
No, nothing like that. So I've never heard from them.
Fair enough. Well, we've got a few listener questions and then we'll finish up. We've got the first one from David Kent, who wants to say, what is your highest score on Tetris?
Well, it's a long, long time ago since I played Tetris. I must have been about 13 or 14 years old, maybe. I remember sitting playing it on the train, going down somewhere. For the old Game Boy, the original black and white Tetris game, and I think I got up to level 9 or 10 before it got too fast for us. So I'm not sure if that's a score or anything, but I think it was about level 10. On the very old game for the Game Boy.
That's better than me. And George Dobson says, are you as lazy as Glenn Durrant says you are?
Yes, I'm very, very lazy. I don't like to do much in the way of activity. That's I've always been like that, so yeah, I'm very lazy.
And our last listener question comes from Blake Griffin Stan. Do you hate Luke Humphreys?
Oh no, I don't hate any of the players on the tour. I've got no hatred at all for Luke Humphreys. I think he's a fantastic player and a really nice person.
Yeah, echo that. And lastly, I remember your tweet from a while ago saying that you've got a 9-darter, you've got a hole in one, you've not had a 147 break in snooker, you've been stuck around the 30s. Any progress on that?
Yeah, I got some professional coaching off a professional player called John Astley up north. He was helping us out a little bit, trying to get us going and stuff. And I think I got a few 50 breaks, but no any other 147 yet, unfortunately. I don't think I'll ever be good enough to do that. I just don't have enough time. You'd have to practice so many hours to be able to do that, I think, and I just don't have the time to do it.
Well, Ryan, good luck on that quest for the 147. Good luck for the World Championship, and always great to have a chat. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. Nice to chat.
Thanks to Ryan for joining us this week. Now, the schedule is out for the pre-Christmas first and second round stage of the tournament. Lots of good matches on the offering right now, but if you could go to just one session, which one would it be?
Yeah, there's a few on there, and Barry Hearn, if you're listening, we know you sometimes tune in to listen to two of your fellow darts anoraks. I'd happily take a ticket off your hands for any of the sessions if they are available, and VIP as well would be nice. But looking down that schedule, yeah, there's some great sessions to look forward to before Christmas, and I'll start off with Monday night in a moment, but the tournament, it does start on Sunday night this year, which is, I think, a little bit unusual. I don't recall it kicking off on a Sunday night very often, but it does mean we go straight into the double sessions on that Monday, the day after, which if you don't work from home or you don't have access to the darts to have it on whilst you're working, it's not ideal. But the Monday night, which is after work on the 16th, I think there's 4 great games in prospect there. Neil Zonneveld against Robert Owen kicking off the night. The Stack Attack, I know you're an admirer of his, Burton. He was a late call-up after Dom Taylor's unfortunate suspension, and I think that's a close game on paper. Then you've got Connor Scott against Ben Robb. Ben looking for his first win at Ali Pali, and he never seems to get a kind draw because Connor Scott, the Challenge Tour champion, looking to cement his spot in the top 64 after a brilliant run to the quarterfinals in Minehead. And if he can do that, he's going to take all that money that he won this year into next year with a 1-year tour card instead. Then you've got Cameron Menzies against Leonard Gates. I don't think I need to say too much more for that one. That's going to be an entertaining game. And then rounding off the night, Gerwin Price against Kim Hybrex or Kim Barry. And I think either of those two can give Price a test in the second round. 2 other sessions I want to give a mention to. Thursday, the 19th of December, the evening session, you've got Nick Kenny against Stowe Bunce, Mensah Suljovic against Matt Campbell, Scott Williams against Nico Springer, a couple of names I mentioned just a moment ago, and then that session rounded off with Michael Smith against either Kevin Dutz or Noah Lynn van Leuven, and you'd expect it to be Kevin Dutz, and if it is, that's a rematch of the opening night at Ali Pali 12 months ago, that 5-set thriller that we had between Smith and Dutz. That was when Smith was the then reigning and defending world champion, so an exciting prospect there if those two go up against each other. And lastly, if you're looking for name power, and this is probably what a lot of our listeners are looking for in terms of a ticket for the opening rounds, Saturday the 21st of December, the evening session, you've got Raymond van Barneveld kicking off his campaign against either Kenny or Bunce. Luke Littler, he's returned to Ali Pali, he'll either play Ryan Meikle or Fallon Sherrock. Damon Heta, another contender, he's going up against Connor Scott or Ben Robb. And the first game of the night, you've got Danny Noppert against one of our guests this week, Ryan Joyce or Darius Labanauskas, who's just won the Modus Super Series Champions Week at the weekend. So if I had to choose one of them, I think I'm going to go with that Monday night. It's the third session of the tournament, still very early days, but it's a very interesting lineup. All 4 matches I want to watch, and yeah, I know where I'm going to be on Monday night after work, enjoying the darts.
Yeah, I had a feeling we'd have a lot of the same ones written down, and we were talking about it before. I think there's one that is a clear standout to me, but I think they did such a good job dividing the matches this time around, so that obviously every session's going to have some good matches because there's so many good players, but even like those matches that are a little bit more niche and maybe only a few of us are going to want to watch, they've spread them out for me. So it made it a little harder to find those standout sessions, because all the sessions actually seem pretty interesting to me. So you said 3, I had 4 written down, and you said the 3 of the 4 I had written down. The only one you didn't say, so I'll start with that one before going to the one that would be the one I chose, and that's the Tuesday afternoon, December 17th. And that's my dark horse session in terms of it might not jump out, but I actually think it's a pretty interesting session. You have the Canadian qualifier, Jim Long there. Of course, he had a deep run earlier this year in the World Seniors Championships, won a pair of CDC titles. He's had a very, very good year and qualified through being the highest ranked Canadian on the CDC Order of Merit, going against Jim Hurl. I think that's a big opportunity for him to pull the upset. Then it's Kevin Dutz. If he wins, it's a rematch of the second round last year against Michael Smith, but going against Noah Lynn van Leuven, who we've seen average 105 in a final this year in the women's series. I think that could be a very good match, especially if Noah Lynn brings her best game. She still is a bit inconsistent. She's still prone to have matches where she'll be averaging in the 70s, but she also has matches where she's averaging in the hundreds. We'll see which Noah Lynn shows up, but that could be a good match if she's on her A game or close to it. After that, Ryan Joyce against Darius Labanauskas. As you mentioned, Labanauskas won the Modus Super Series. We just heard from Ryan Joyce. I think both of them are going to come in very good form. And then Mike DeDecker against either Luke Woodhouse or Lawrence Iligan, a player who I'm very high on. I think that's a really, really good session, and one that might fly a little bit under the radar. But the best session, and the one I want to go to, is that one that you called the Star Power session, the Saturday evening one, because it has the star power, but it also has what will likely be at least 3, if not 4, really good matches. Danny Noppert against either Ryan Joyce or Darius Labanauskas is a match that could go either way now that Labanauskas is playing well again. Remember, it wasn't that long ago that Labanauskas made it all the way to the quarterfinals of the PDC World Championships. He's not been anywhere near that player over the last few years. That's why he fell off the tour. But over the last 6 to 9 months, he has been playing better. He can cause Ryan Joyce problems, and obviously Ryan Joyce, he should win that match, or is likely to win that match, will cause Danny Noppert problems if he gets into that match. Raymond van Barneveld against either Nick Kenny or Stowe Bunce. Stowe Bunce, he showed that he's not afraid of anyone when he made the quarterfinals of the Grand Slam a couple years ago. We haven't seen as much from Nick Kenny, but he had probably his best year in the PDC. Luke Littler against Ryan Meikle or Fallon Sherrock. I think Luke Littler speaks for himself. Fallon Sherrick speaks for herself. Ryan Meagle, very, very good player, and one who likes to run a bit. And then on the last match, Damon Hedda, most likely against Connor Scott, possibly against Ben Robb. Connor Scott is a player who I should have mentioned on the dark horse list. I think he's a player who he's weird to think of going against a very good player, Damon Hedda, being a dream job. I think it's a big opportunity for him to get a big scalp if he gets through that first round. That's one of the matches of the second round, assuming he gets past Ben Robb. So that's the session I would go to because I really don't want to miss any of those matches.
Can't argue with that. And get in touch. Let us know which sessions you're most looking forward to before Christmas. We're going to finish up the show with a look back at Lakeside in a moment. But before we do, let's bring in our final guest on this week's show. He's one of the PDC's top referees. Here's our chat with Huw Ware.
I'm joined today by the PDC referee and the Winmau Global Ambassador, Huw Ware. Huw, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Burton. Apart from this raging head cold that I've got, I picked up about 3 days ago. I was in London on Monday to film the PDC's Christmas adverts, which is very exciting. It's going to come out pretty soon. And then on the Tuesday, I was coming back home and I started feeling quite sort of under the weather. And I was up in Manchester then on Wednesday, feeling like absolute death warmed up to work at the Paddy Power, that 9-darter hole-in-one 147 challenge that they did. So I was spotting the darts on that. Then went from there straight down to London to work at the O2 Works Christmas Do, which was last night. So I've been up since 3 o'clock in the morning to go to Manchester. By the time I got back to my hotel room in London, it was about 11 p.m. And so I've come back today, back home. And as I'm walking home, the heavens opened, raging wind and cold and wet. So I think I've made myself ill all over again, Burton, to be honest, which is just fabulous. But hey, I would rather be this bad now than during the Worlds. Let's put it that way.
Yes, and I don't blame you for that. I hope you're feeling better in time for Worlds, but it's been a while since we've had you on, and over the past few years, you've become a regular feature in the majors, including the World Championships. You've called multiple big finals, the World Match Play just a few months ago. But what would you say would be the favorite match you've had the pleasure to call so far in your career?
You know, it's so difficult to decide one particular game because, you know, there have been games that I've called where there's been a 9-dart finish. So therefore, I mean, the rest of the game may not have been all that great, but of course the game is memorable because there's been a 9-darter in it. There's been matches that I've called which have maybe been the second round of a European Tour event somewhere, but they've both had amazing averages. I've called Lakeside World Championship finals, so that they are important to me because of what the match actually was. So it's very difficult to quantify or to contextualize, rather, one particular game which stands out as my favourite. I suppose, I don't know whether this is recency bias, but I did Michael Van Gerwen against Luke Littler in the quarterfinals of the European Tour in Prague a couple of months ago. I think Michael averaged 112 and Luke averaged 110. Well, certainly in terms of standards, that's the best match I've ever called. I mean, I can't think of too many darts matches, Burton, where both players have been over 110. So it just makes me think, well, I don't know when I'm going to get another game of darts like that again, you know? So I would probably, recency bias probably, but like in terms of standards, that is the best that I've refereed from both players.
Yeah, no, that was a fantastic match. Now, just in general, what do you do to get ready for a match? Do you have some sort of practice routine, or does it just depend on the event?
No, do you know, there's absolutely nothing like that whatsoever. Sometimes I think people think that we must do like sort of vocal warm-ups or mental arithmetic exercises or things like this, but there really is nothing like that at all. I mean, so we get to the venue about an hour before play gets underway. So one of the markers that we have on the team will write up the sheets for the night, which maybe takes about 10-15 minutes. So that's something for someone in the team to do in that hour before we go on stage. But for the referees, there's literally nothing. I mean, we're very lucky that everything is set up for us, you know. We have a great staging crew that rigs everything. All the media team are there, of course, all the PDC team are there. So everything is sort of done and ready. The only thing that we have to do as officials is go on stage and officiate. And that's our job, and that's what we do. But there's no sort of vocal warm-ups or mental arithmetic sort of things like this that we go through. Not at all. We literally find our dressing room. We find our room, and that's about it, really.
Now, you mentioned mental arithmetic. Some players have their own very unique mental arithmetic to get down from 501 to 0. From the caller's perspective, what's the most difficult type of player to call? Are it the quicker players? Is it the more unorthodox players, or does it not really matter?
I think it's the players that play more on instinct. They don't necessarily have a set way of going. So, I mean, I don't think there's a game that goes by where Luke Littler doesn't throw me at least once, you know, because, I mean, a lot of what he does makes total sense, but it's maybe a bit different from the last time he went for that shot, or it's just something that I wasn't expecting him to do. So I think those that play more off the cuff, I mean, if you have, because somebody like Gerwyn Price has a very set way of going. I know pretty much most of the time anyway, before he throws the dart, where it's actually going to be going, where it's aiming for. So I can prepare myself for that mentally on the math side of things. But somebody like Michael Smith or Luke Littler may go for 62, treble 14, double 10, one shot, and then 5 minutes later they'll go treble 18, double 4. Do you know what I mean? So it's that kind of player, the player that you can't really sort of go down one line of thinking most with. Do you know what I mean? Because then you have to sort of pull yourself back from that route that they've gone down and go down another one in your own head. So those are the most difficult ones to call for.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. And you mentioned, of course, previously in the BDO with the Lakeside, you've mentioned a bunch of events in the PDC, majors and European tours. You've now called matches in most of the biggest venues in the world of darts. Is there a venue or a tournament, though, that's your favorite to call at?
I think the best venue that I've done, and I've consistently thought this every time I've gone there, is the Premier League in Dublin. I think the Premier League in Dublin, the atmosphere there is always absolutely unbelievable. And it's like that every single time. I think I've done it 3 or 4 times, I can't remember, but each time has been just as good as the last. So I would say the Premier League in Dublin. The other ones that spring to mind are ones that are more sort of personal, close to my heart. So the Premier League in Cardiff, I used to go there every year when I was a kid. And now I referee at it, same as the World Match Play. So those two probably have a sentimental feel. But the Premier League in Dublin for atmosphere is always unbelievable.
Now, recently, back in September, you were announced as a Winmau Global Ambassador. First, what is a Winmau Global Ambassador, and what does it entail?
I mean, I don't think I'm touring the world as such. I mean, it's a good idea, though. I will put it to the Winmau team. Does this mean that I get to go on like sort of free holidays and promote darts? Because if it does, then sign me up, you know. So no, it's well, basically. So this is a bit of an exclusive for you guys at the weekly Dartscast. Get ready, brace yourselves, because all part of the deal, they wanted to give me a platform to create my own sort of profile. So the day before the World Championship starts, I am launching my own website. It's going to be a website where you can inquire to book me for exhibitions and personal appearances. You can read my brand new blog, which I'm starting before the World Championship starts, and I will be blogging from the World Championships at Alexandra Palace onwards throughout 2025 and beyond. I'm going to have my own podcast coming probably around mid to late February. We're hoping to launch that early March at the latest. So it's all very exciting, Burton. There's a lot of good things underway. I've been working with the gentleman who designed Red Dragon Darts' website. He is designing my website for me, and I have a meeting with him shortly after this. We've been talking to a company called the Sports Social Network, which is Europe's biggest sports podcasting network. They have an average monthly downloads of about 10 million listeners. They have a number of Premier League Football Club podcasts on their books, athletics, cycling, lots of different sort of podcasts. The one sport that they haven't got a podcast for, funny enough, so far is darts. So we have agreed that they are going to place and put my podcast onto their network. What I'm hoping to have for the podcast is a different guest from the world of darts every week. And we're just going to be talking. We're just going to be talking about anything that sort of comes into our minds. And throughout that conversation will be questions and conversation about their career, their lives, how they got into darts, where they are now in the world of darts, how their form is going, what they're thinking, how the world of darts is changing. So I'm hoping for darts fans, it will be something really entertaining for them, very interesting to listen to. I would love the podcast to be a place where dart players can come on and sort of not have any sort of media facade or things like this. We can see the dart players 100% for authentically who they are. And hopefully we'll make an enjoyable listen and an enjoyable conversation for darts fans to listen to. So every episode of that podcast will go onto my website as well. There's going to be links to all the other material that I do away from darts. So I've done stuff with the PDC media team, a group of darts influencers called the Bull Hitters. There'll be pictures. So I've literally been sent the other day. We did something in the Houses of Parliament with Paddy Power and Prostate Cancer UK, with a lot of MPs, and Michael Smith and Fallon Sherrick were there. So I will be sharing stories and blogs about all those kind of experiences, filming the PDC Christmas adverts, and there'll be pictures to accompany all that sort of thing. So I want to give a behind-the-scenes-esque look at the darts world through sort of my perspective, if you like. And all of that will be available on my website, on all my social media channels, on Winmau's social media channels. So I'm very excited, and I hope it's... I just hope I don't sound as nasal as what I do right now. I just hope I'm more kind. I hope I'm better by the time we start filming the first episode. And I sound a bit more engaging than what I do right now, because I'm sounding a bit like Kenneth Williams at the moment. So that's all in association with the global ambassadorship, basically.
We'll look forward to that. I'll be sure definitely to listen. Are they going to make your own line of darts or your own line of microphones, or is it just more on the media side?
You never know. You never know. I mean, let's see. We're hoping that it is going to be a success. I mean, what I want more than anything else, Burton, is for darts fans to be entertained. That's what I want. I want people to sort of enjoy the content that we're going to be producing. And you never know how it's going to go. We don't know how it's going to go, but I hope so. Well, you never know in the future. Let's not rule it out anyway.
We'll see that. But let's turn back to the PDC now. When we had you on a few years ago, it was around when the PDC had announced that they'd be participating in Stonewall's Rainbow Laces campaign. Recently, the PDC renewed their support for that. Can you tell your listeners a little bit about Rainbow Laces and how the PDC is involved?
Yeah, the Rainbow Laces campaign was a campaign that was going on in sport in the UK for quite a few years before darts got involved in it as well. At that time, it was being pushed primarily in sports like football and rugby and cricket. And then it sort of started diversifying out into golf and tennis and all these sorts of sports. And it was 2018, and I went to the PDC, and through conversations that I had with them, it became apparent to both of us that it would be a good idea for the PDC to start supporting the Rainbow Laces campaign along with all these other sports. So basically, I mean, what we've done for the last few years is during the 2-week campaign, because it only lasts for 2 weeks, the Rainbow Laces campaign, at the end of November. Normally it overlaps with the Grand Slam of Darts and or the Players' Championship finals. So we'll do things like we'll put the PDC logo on stage in rainbow colours. We will offer rainbow laces and badges to all players and staff members. And that's pretty much sort of about it. And we will do a press release every year as well, showing our support for LGBT+, because the whole idea of Rainbow Laces is to send a message out to LGBT+ people who may not be out in their chosen sport, who may not be confident in their sexuality in their chosen sport, be they players or fans or officials or whoever they may be at all levels of the game. It's to send a message out to them to say that if you were to come out, then you would be accepted. Because I think a lot of LGBT+ people, and the surveys and the statistics back this up, that there are a lot of gay or bi or trans people who are scared of coming out because of the sporting environment that they find themselves in. So it's just to say to them that if you were to come out, then you would be supported, you know, or even if they were already out, it helps with their own confidence. So that's the message, pure and simple. I mean, this year, for the first time, we actually put behind the ticketing desk at the Aldersley Leisure Village at the Grand Slam, we put 50 Rainbow Laces packs behind the ticketing desk for fans to collect for free. And by the day of the final, they had all gone. All of them had gone. That's the first time we've ever done that. And we had enough fans come along and to pick up each Rainbow Laces pack, and we put 50 of them behind the counter. So that was really, really good and really positive. And we've also launched this year the Darts' official LGBT+ group, Out On The Oche, which has done very well so far.
Well, that got me to my next question, the Out On The Oche campaign, which you tweeted about a few weeks ago, to champion LGBTQ plus stories in the sport and to work with organizations to ensure that darts is a safe and inclusive environment for all. How did that group come about, and what's the reaction been to it since announcing it?
It was an idea that we had along with Stonewall for this year. It was just the idea that, you know, so many football clubs and different sports have official LGBT+ groups now. So it's high time that darts had one as well. It's a group that, like you said, it's what we want to do is to connect LGBT+ people from all across the world, really, to share in each other's stories, to just have a place where people do not feel as if they are sort of alone with this. Because so far we've had about 50 members so far join in about 3 weeks, which I can't believe we've got that number already, Burton, to be honest. And a lot of people have been introducing themselves, sharing their stories and their experiences in darts. A lot of them negative, a few positive. But what everybody has been saying in pretty much all of their posts is along the lines of, well, thank God this group now exists. So I think it's a good way of, especially for those who have had negative experiences. One of the things that you feel when you have a negative experience is it can make you feel quite alone, as if you are alone in this struggle within the environment that you are in, because there may not be any other gay people who play in the same pub league as you, in the same town as you, in the same village. But now with Out On The Oche, yes, these people may not live close to you, but you know that there are other people who are there who have also shared in similar experiences, so therefore you are not alone. And also what we want to do in the future is to work with darts bodies from junior darts academies right up to the professional game to try and implement educational tools and inclusive policies and put those in place to make sure that darts is as educated and as well as inclusive as it can possibly be in the future going forward. And hopefully that work will pay off. It might take the best part of a decade, may take the best part of 2 decades, but if we can work continuously with these organizations, and all these organizations have indicated to me that they would be happy to work with us on that, we hope that it will make darts a more positive place for everybody going forwards for ad infinitum.
And a couple more questions. You mentioned, the goals of the group, but have you noticed any change in the atmosphere for gay and just LGBTQ plus people as a whole in darts over the past few years? Obviously, in some ways, the women's game might be a little bit ahead of the men's game with numerous out gay and trans women's players. But overall, have you noticed any change? Hopefully positive, but in any direction?
My perspective is that darts is in a much better place now when it comes to LGBT than what it was a few years ago. No, it's not perfect, but it is a lot better. But then at the same time, I look at everything that Noah Lynn van Leuven is going through at the moment, everything that Samantha Lewis is going through at the moment. And of course, I think to myself, there's a lot of work still to be done. And I mean, I've spoken before about some of the experiences that I have had in darts, but none of them pale into any comparison with what Noah Lynn and Samantha Lewis have gone through and are still going through right up to this day. So I think, again, you ask about why Out on the Oche was formed. That was another big reason as to why. Because it had become apparent to us all that a network like this was needed now more than ever. So,
yeah, definitely agree there. And finally, we'll end on a little bit more of a lighter note. Looking ahead, what would you say is the next milestone you'd like to achieve in your career, whether it's refereeing a particular event, some new goal or accomplishment in your role as global ambassador, or just anything? What's the next milestone for you that you'd like in your career?
Well, again, it's very exciting because I'm kind of going to tick one off at the World Championships, because I'm doing the whole World Championships for the first time. I'm doing all 17 days. So that's a milestone that definitely it springs to mind. That is going to be ticked off in a few weeks' time. So that's great, and I can't wait for that. I would love to go to New York for the World Series, just because I've never been to New York before. Obviously for the shopping, nothing to do with the darts. I mean, if no one wants to see me at the darts, I mean, they won't see me at all. I'll be down. I'll be off shopping somewhere. They'll have to come and find me. So
you won't be having a drink with me?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's where we're going. Where are we going in New York, Burton? Where are we going for a drink?
I'll have a think over the next 6-7 months. We don't want everyone to tag along, so I'll tell you offline.
Do you know, I've got so many plans. I've got it all written down. Everything I want to see in New York, everything I want to do in New York, all the sort of history that's there that I've got to go and see. So it's all written down. I just need to go, and that's it. So hopefully I will do that one day. And I suppose just anything that's new, Burton, to be honest. I mean, I've been so lucky. I've been involved in a lot of World Championship promotion this year. So we did like the Paddy Power Challenge on Wednesday, the O2 Works Christmas Do, the Houses of Parliament a week Monday ago, filming the PDC Christmas adverts. All these sorts of things, that is something different, that is something fresh and exciting, things that I've never done before. So whether that means visiting a new territory in the world or doing something like going to the Houses of Parliament, anything that's sort of new and different is something that I look forward to. So, I mean, by that same notion, my website, my blog, my podcast, that is all going to be something very new and very different next year. So I can't wait to give that a go. So anything that's new and fresh and different, that's what excites me.
Well, we'll look forward to all that new and fresh stuff. not just next year, but at the World Championships at the end of this year. Huw, thank you so much, and best of luck.
Thank you. Thanks, Burton. It's always a pleasure, mate. Thank you.
Thanks again to Huw for joining us now, finishing up the show with a look back at the Lakeside. It was the 2024 WDF World Championships last week, and Shane McGuirk from Ireland winning the men's title, the first Irishman to win a senior World Darts Championship. A word on him, and also we've got to say a few words on the legend that is Paul Lim, reaching his first world final at 70 years of age.
I feel bad for Shane McGuirk that Paul Lim is still such a big part of the story and still the leading part of the story because, well, I mean, it's Paul Lim. But at the same time, I think we need to start and finish this conversation, at least I need to, by talking about Shane McGuirk, because he was the best player over the course of the week. And it's not like this was something that was close. He didn't drop a set until he was 2 sets away from winning the title. And okay, he probably should have dropped the first set in the final because Paul Lim had 5 darts to wrap it up and missed them all in that first set. But McGuirk came back, took his chances, and then just blitzed through the next 3 sets to go 4 sets up in that match. And yes, he showed a little wobble in the 7th and 8th sets. He, missed some opportunities. His game definitely dropped off. Even the 9th set, his game was still dropped off until he was able to get that break and then finally find his throw in the middle of the second leg. They were both having a terrible set for the first leg and a half. But then he found it and he got over the line. But that doesn't detract from he was the best player. He only dropped 3 sets in the end. In the early rounds, he had the performance of the first round. Averaging 93 nearly against Mark Barilli, averaged 96 against Edwin Torbjornsson, destroyed the Australian 4th seed Brandon Weaning, again averaging well north of a 90, averaged under 90 against Peter Machin, but it was a match that was better than his average. He was averaging over 90 for much of it, and he just never gave Machin, the former World Trophy winner, a chance in that. And then in the semifinals, just absolutely hammered Francois Chouet, and he was averaging 94 for a while, went down a little in the end, still almost 93. Just over the course of the week, the best player. But Paul Lim was the story. And yeah, a bit fortunate at times. He got through marathon matches in almost every round. Went the distance against Lung Kai Fan. Went the distance against Gary Stone. Went the distance every set against the darts against Jarno Bottenberg before Jason Brandon just could not hit a double, losing 14 legs in a row. In what was not a high-quality semifinal. We can't pretend otherwise. And showed the fighting spirit in that final to get back in the match and to really put a level of interest and a level of attention on Lakeside that otherwise I don't think would have been there. There wasn't much media, but there was some media, at least in the mainstream British media, and it was all about Paul Lim. One story on Sky that was also about Beau Greaves before the final, but everything else was about Paul Lim. He was the face of this tournament. He was this tournament. And yes, he didn't win at the end, but he's what we're going to remember. But as I said, I'm going to start and finish talking about Shane McGuirk because it would be rude to Shane McGuirk not to talk about him. He was the best player. He's the deserved world champion. He's a player that on those performances shows that he's good enough to get into the PDC. Whether he's going to win a tour card is another question. What he's going to do with it, if he gets one, that's another question. But he's definitely good enough. Those performances over most of the rounds, especially over some of the longer matches, are bottom half of the PDC. But in this field, that's more than good enough. And you've got to think he has the game to lift himself, because he did lift himself when he had to make sure that he won this tournament. So I'm curious to see where he goes from here. He is now the WDF World Champion. He's the Lakeside Champion, and a deserved one at that.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And we're hopefully going to have a chat with Shane on the show in the coming weeks. And I'll start off with the winner, Shane McGuirk, because as you say, a lot of the attention was on Paul Lim last week. A little bit like Littler and Humphreys in the PDC World Championship final in January. But instead of all the focus being on a 16-year-old, it was on a 70-year-old. That only happens in darts, doesn't it? But McGuirk, a worthy winner. I said in the preview show for Lakeside, I wouldn't be surprised if someone starts in the first round and comes through that top half of the draw and makes the final. And in the end, it happened in both halves of the draw. Shane McGuirk didn't drop a set on his way to the final, mirroring the late Eric Bristow, who was the only other player to achieve that feat in a men's World Championship. That was 40 years ago in 1984. And the second round game, worth a mention, against Edwin Torbjornsson, 9 out of 9 on the doubles. The first time that's been done in a World Championship best of 5 sets match. And in those early rounds, it was Shane McGuirk who was the one that was really catching the eye. He was posting the low to mid 90s averages consistently. There was under the 90 average against Peter Machin in the quarterfinals at an 89 average, but then back up into the 90s, and it was still a consistent level. And the final itself, it could have been a different story. Had Paul Lim took those set darts in the first set, McGuirk won it, and I think it allowed him to settle, really. Raced into a 4-0 lead, kept the crowd quiet, and Lim, yes, he threatened that late comeback, got it back to 5-3, but McGuirk had more than enough time to get the job done. And at 29 years of age, a lot of time ahead of him in the game. And you mentioned the PDC. You expect him to have another go at Q School next month to try and win his tour card. If he's not successful there, he's got a guaranteed spot at Lakeside next year to try and defend the title. And as for Paul Lim, I mean, what more else can we say that hasn't been said already? A legend, isn't he? And I only met him briefly for a couple of minutes whilst I was at Lakeside last week. It was after his second round win against Kai Fan Lung, and he kindly signed a few dart cases for me, but just an all-round top man. And this run, I think there's a lot of new darts fans this year who may not have heard of Paul Lim. Well, this run, it's introduced him to a whole new crop of fans, which I'm pleased about. And also for Paul as well, to have a run like he did in a World Championship, because before this, he'd made a quarterfinals once back in 1990 when he hit that 9-darter, and to have played now in 27 World Championships, I think he deserved a run like this to make a final. And if he'd have won the final, this show would have been the Paul Lim Appreciation Hour. We probably wouldn't have talked about Ali Pali and the PDC Worlds, but I think to make the final at this point in his career, some of the games that he came through, that the late nights, the last set deciders, it was compelling viewing. And I know he said he's going to be back next year at Lakeside, but if this ends up being Paul Lim's last moment in the sun, going deep in the World Championships, then what a moment for all of us to share with him. And I think we're going to remember this for a long time as well.
It wasn't only late nights, it was also early mornings with that quarterfinal going till 12:15. But let's talk about the women's competition as well. Beau Greaves completing the hat trick of women's world titles, dropping just one set en route. She's already confirmed that she will be back at Lakeside next year. But what other goals could there be for the ladies number one, what that she could set herself for 2025?
Yeah, just touching on that confirmation as well from Beau that she's going to be back at Lakeside next year. I think she's getting quicker and quicker at making a World Championship decision each year. You go back a couple of years, she joked about milking it because people kept asking her. So she said that she was going to start her own World Championship. This year, she announced it after winning the Women's World Match Play that Lakeside was a destination again this winter. Well, just a few minutes after coming off stage in the final last night when we're talking, she's retained the Women's World title, and she's already said in her interviews that she is going to be back at Lakeside in 2025, which is great news for the WDF because Beau is one of their most marketable and famous stars that they've got playing in their biggest tournaments. And I think it's also great for the ladies game as well because, yes, obviously every other ladies player would have hoped Beau would pick Ali Pali over Lakeside, which would boost all of their chances of winning the title. But for the ladies game, you need to have your top ladies competing in your World Championships, and Beau is by far the top ladies player right now. But as for goals for 2025 for Beau, Lakeside and the women's match play, defending those two titles, that's going to be high on the agenda. But I think next year could be a year where we see Beau Greaves again branch out further, playing against the men. And she's going to get the opportunity to do that as well through the PDC World Masters in January. If I'm not mistaken, the top players from the women's series get invited to that. The UK Open, the qualification structure's changed for that. We've not got the Rileys qualifiers anymore. There is that one-day qualifier, which if you listen to our Under the 128 special with Matthew Kiernan at Lakeside last week, he's already confirmed his spot in those qualifiers. So hopefully Beau follows suit and plays in them as well. The development tour, she's still got a few years left where she's going to be eligible for that. And you look at this year as well, without fully committing to it, she ended up finishing 8th and won a title, and that was playing, I think she only played half of the 24 events. So maybe we see her play another weekend or two of that, and the World Youth Championship in the PDC. I'd love to see Beau give that a go as well. And with some of these events, there could be some clashes. I think this year the World Masters, the WDF one that is, clashed with the last week of the development tour. So sometimes you've got to choose between one or the other. And I think it's worth mentioning as well some of the other young female talent that we saw at Lakeside as well, not just Beau Greaves, but Sophie McKinley, 18 years old, making the women's and girls finals. Paige Pauling, I think she's only 16, winning the girls title, but those two, along with Beau, who's still only 20, I don't know how closely they know each other. I think Paige and Sophie are quite close, but all three of them, if you got those three together, going to development tours as a group, being the flag bearers for other young girls to pick up darts and improve their game, I think that would be nice to see. And I know Beau is very passionate about ladies darts, wanting to push that side of the game on. So if she can have some support from other girls in those events, like maybe Paige and Sophie and some others, that might push her on as well to commit to more things, like playing more of the development tour in 2025.
Yeah, I hope the development tour is one of those goals. Whether she goes to Q School so that she can play the challenge tour at the very least, we'll see. But she runs the risk that if she goes to Q School, she'll win a tour card because she's obviously good enough. You look at the challenge tour, the development tour, you mentioned it. She played half the events. 9 of those 12, she made the quarterfinals in. She finished 6th in averages, ahead of Dylan Slevin, ahead of Leighton Bennett, ahead of Nathan Rafferty, players who've been around playing the PDC PDC Pro Tour for a long time. Owen Bates as well, Jared Cole. She was well ahead of all of them in averages, behind only Wessel Nyman, Jan Van Veen, Nico Springer, Keen Barry, and Sebastian Bielecki. That's not a bad quintet of players to be behind, 4 of whom will be at the PDC World Championships starting this weekend. I think she should push herself. We've talked about it. It's up to her. If she doesn't want to, she doesn't want to. We've seen very good players who decided that's just not the life for them. Harry Ward being the biggest example. We saw him play a little challenge tour this year after going back to Q School, but he walked away from it. It wasn't the career he wanted. And maybe Beau Greaves just doesn't want that career, at least not at this point in her life. She is only 20. But she has the game. She has the ability. She's shown it when we have seen her push herself against men. But as far as what the goals will be, I think retaining the titles, doing better than this past year. And part of doing better would be not losing any matches in the WDF. She did lose one this past year. Dominating the women's series like she did a few years ago. The first part of this year, she struggled quite a bit. She was clearly the best player by the middle of the season and the second half of the season, but she wasn't at the start of the year. She struggled a bit. Having a full year of dominance, maybe you can't win all 24, even if you play all 24, but aiming to win 3 out of 4 each weekend like she's capable of, maybe that's now the goal, trying to win 3/4 of the titles and defending the women's world match play. Beyond that, we'll have to see. We'll hopefully hear from her at some point about what those goals are. We'll keep our eyes peeled to see if she does go to Q School to open up the challenge tour as well. But we'll see it, and we'll see if she keeps progressing. She is the best female player in the world. She's one of the best youth players in the world still, as her performances on the development tour showed. And we'll have to wait till next year to find out what that brings. Anything else for this week?
Well, I've got a few things to say before we go. We've got to say thank you to our guests for joining us, to Huw, Ryan and Rashad for their time. Thank you to our sponsors, to Darts Corner, Condor Darts and Quiff for their continued support. Links in the description. Go and check them all out. Thank you to everyone for listening, and thank you to everyone who listened to our content during Lakeside, and a personal thank you to everyone at the WDF behind the scenes for all of their help whilst I was there, and to everyone that I met and got the chance to speak to, both on and off the podcast. Thanks as well to everyone who got in touch with some nice comments about my commentary debut last week at Lakeside as well. A really enjoyable experience getting to commentate on some of the matches, and shout out again to the WDF for the opportunity, and to Dan McCarthy, who led the commentary. He did all 80 matches and looked after me as well. And lastly, just finishing on a sad note for myself, I wanted to dedicate this week's episode to my granddad, Leslie, who sadly passed away last week. If it wasn't for him, there's a very good chance I wouldn't be sat here talking darts to you all right now. As a kid, when I went to visit my nan and granddad, they would always have the darts on TV, and for a long time as well, when I was growing up, my granddad, he'd record all of the darts for me. He'd record each session on a disc, and that's how I'd watch the darts, because I didn't have access to Sky Sports or I wasn't at home. So he did all that for me, probably talking 10 plus years, every tournament, which meant I could keep enjoying the darts. So I know he's going to be upstairs now, looking forward to the start of this World Championship on Sunday. And that's going to be my message to everyone listening as well. Hang tight until Sunday, and then we can all enjoy the darts.
Yes, obviously, my thoughts go to you and your family. I know how much of a trooper you were to record this episode today and to provide all that content over Lakeside. I'm glad that we were able to talk today about darts. We'll of course talk more about that over the coming weeks. We'll try to get a show out during multiple shows out during the World Championships. We usually do one around Christmas and maybe one ahead of the quarterfinals on New Year's Day. You'll have to hang tight for that. But until then, enjoy the darts. We'll be enjoying it with you.